Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show this Friday, the 27th of October, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. What's going on out there in the world right now? Well, U.S. warplanes are conducting major strikes on Iran proxies in Syria. Now, it says these two facilities where they're striking in eastern Syria are used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. This means that there's probably members of the Iran Revolutionary Guard. So there could be casualties of the Iranian soldiers or the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard. This is how close they're coming now to striking up a war with Iran. They're very, very close to having a war with Iran right now. Now, they used F-16s and F-15s to strike these targets in Syria. We're very, very close to this war expanding out and becoming much, much larger. Putin has warned that the Gaza war could spread well beyond the Middle East. He's titled it Extremely Dangerous and Destructive Consequences. He says it could spill over and far beyond the borders of the Middle East. He's also said it could launch a real wave of chaos and mutual hatred, not only in the Middle East, but also far beyond its borders. So, what else did he say here? Moscow and Washington right now are charging each other with bad faith and political posturing to push their own positions. So they're charging each other with this. Russian side has charged the Biden administration with not being genuine in its proposals for humanitarian corridors in Gaza. That's what Russia has said. So all this is heating up a lot. Heading toward war, And another thing I wanted to point out here, and changing the subject a little bit, there's a mass shooter right now that's on the loose. The last place they tracked him to, I guess, was Maine. Now, people in Maine right now are sheltering behind locked doors because they're frightened. But they're spreading this search out to other states now. It worries me because I'm very close to Maine. In fact, a little bit of trivia for you guys. Okay? Nova Scotia is called Nova Scotia, Canada, because it was originally called New Scotland. Because when they came over here, they started naming things after the names in England. New England was the New World, the New England. They were establishing a New England, and Nova Scotia, Scotland, in connection with the Old England, an awful lot of the names of the different cities in New England are named after cities in England. Interesting bit of trivia, but I'm not far away from Maine. Really, it's just practically across the border. I mean, it's about, to Maine right here, I'm about 300 miles away. 400 miles away is all. That's not far. But I'm not really too concerned about this, but I keep my eye out, I'm not going to say it's nothing, because this guy's a real bad actor. He's fatally shot 18 people at a bowling alley and a bar. Horrible. Now, let's move on and take a look at some other stuff going on. Now, I made a lot of claims in my show yesterday. I may have made a big, astounding claim that I thought about half of the people on Earth would possibly perish in the next few years. And that's a big claim. What could cause something like that to happen? I mean, you guys are probably thinking, hey, Glenn's talking about a nuclear war, a nuclear winter that would wipe out that many people. No, not necessarily. No, I don't think so. The studies have been done. All out nuclear war. They give it everything they got. And initially it kills about 200 million. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the numbers I'm talking about. 200 million. That's only 1/5 of 1 billion. All out nuclear war. But then, as time passes, you get your nuclear winter and you get your radiation sickness and everything else, putting the total death toll together after about a year, after an all-out nuclear war, it raises to about 500 million. About 500 million people would die. But that's still only 1/2 of 1 billion. And what I was talking about yesterday on my show, I was saying 4 billion people, which would be half of the Earth's population. What could wipe out that many people? What's going through my mind? First off, vulnerability of food production. Going back 100 years ago, or even going back 75 years ago to the last World War we have, World Wars are tremendously disruptive to food production. Tremendously. They throw everything into kilter. Out of kilter, I should say. A world war does. But then we got another thing to consider overlapping this. Is the way food production was done like 75 years ago during the last World War and how it's done now. It's totally changed. Food production around the world. Food production back in those days was done back in the 1940s and 1930s. Was done mostly with smaller size farms that weren't connected with conglomerates and big corporations. A lot of them were privately owned farms. And they were in size range of 30 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres, 200 acre size farms. But it's all been changed now. A lot of it's been changed anyway. Big time. It's been overhauled and changed. And now what we got is these big conglomerates, big corporations. And they'll own like 10,000 acres, 50,000 acres, 100,000 acres. And they operate it off the internet and through the structure of the banking system is how they function. The banks have them connected to the banks. They're connected directly to the banks. The agricultural production now. And so with a worldwide financial crisis also comes a crisis for the farming of food. You overlap that with what would happen to food production during a world war simultaneously. And you're going to get a drastic decrease in the amount of world global food production each year. A drastic decrease. We haven't seen a drastic decrease. Even with what's happening in Ukraine right now, global food production right now is 9.5 billion tons. And considering what we use every year, 1.3 billion tons goes to waste of that 4 billion metric tons of food produced each year. Right now. But this food production could get cut in half with these two factors coming into play. A world war, with all of the craziness that goes along with a world war, and how that can chop into your food production. And then at the same time, like I said, all these big major farms are connected into the banking system and stuff, and connected to the internet. They can't even run their tractors now unless they get internet service. And parts. They got these supply chains to supply parts for all of their machines and everything. Do you know back during the last World War, an awful lot of it was done by hand with horses and plows that were cast iron, and they didn't require the internet to be up and running. They didn't require special fuel additives. They didn't have the bank breathing down their neck on their farm. The bank could foreclose on a giant farm, and what are they going to do? They just have to leave all their tractors in the barn. This kind of chaos within the financial system can cause less food production. So, overall, what does all this mean? I'm expecting that this number of 4 billion metric tons a year could possibly get cut to 2 billion metric tons a year. Now, we have seen little decrease in food production, probably around 3%, because of what's happened with this war so far. And what have we seen that did here in America? That little reduction in food supply for the world. You've seen food prices go up by 50%. In some cases, 100% in the past couple of years, just since 2020. I mean, I was out there looking at a loaf of bread, and I remember before 2020, a loaf of bread was $1.90 at my local grocery store. I went in there yesterday. It's $7 for a loaf. That's how the prices went up, from $1.90 to $7. So in some cases, it's went up well in excess of 100%. And that's what a 3% drop in the amount of food that the world's producing roughly right now. Still producing nearly as much as we were producing. But by gosh, you see a world war and a financial calamity occur simultaneously, and we could be looking at massive cuts in food, and that'd put massive price increases to food. It could go up 10 times what it is right now, along with gasoline going up like 3-4 times what it is right now. And combine all this together, and you're looking at, even in the West over here, you're looking at food shortages. And in places where we have countries like in Africa and these countries like that are already borderline starving, it could go off the scale where they do starve. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that we could lose an awful lot of people, because when you combine that with a world war, which possibly could even be a nuclear war, on top of food production, and then you start to think about disease in all of this. Factor in maybe the next pandemic, and we might not get away so easy. It could be a pandemic where it is much more, what do they call it, virulent, when it kills more people. Much higher. It could be much worse than COVID, the next pandemic. And you start to factor in things like this, and it starts to paint a picture. And then you have to start to think about how we're already, population is probably peaked and going to be starting to go into decline. And there's things like how fertility, human fertility. If you wanted to study this right now, you're going to find out that this is not looking good. All these chemicals, pesticides, plastics, and everything else, and along with all the injections and everything else coming together, it's dropping off a cliff. Human reproduction is dropping off a cliff just on its own right now. We've basically peaked. I mean, if nothing happened, in the next few years, our population would probably start to go into a massive decline. Countries like Japan, countries like China and stuff, they're especially Japan's especially bad off in this. Anyway, let's move on and take a look at the markets now. First, we're going to check into the silver price today, which is at $22.67, and it is following it pretty much in that narrow band of trading band right now pretty much. It's following the last several days. And so it's not going much of anywhere, even though it has dropped 10 cents, mostly in this narrow band. Let's take a look at gold today and see what it's doing. Gold's at $19.79. It's down $5.20. Now, cryptocurrency is maintaining that 33,998 for Bitcoin. Ethereum is at 1781. So Bitcoin is holding that about a $4,000, went up about $4,000. It was 30,000, now it's 34,000 roughly, and it's been maintaining it for a couple days now. So that's looking good for the cryptos. And then XRP is at 55.4 cents. Let's take a look now at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is down 141 points to the downside today. Dow hasn't been doing so good lately. Let's just put it on a 1 month chart and take a look here. It's starting to go into a rather sharp decline. It started on the 17th, it looks like, and now we're at the 27th, so it's been a week now, and it's been this decline from let me see, where is it? How much? Where it is right now, and how much have we lost in total? From right here, it was 33,997. So we've lost about 1,300 points. We'll have to wait and see if this continues. Let's take a look at the crude oil. It's 53 cents up at 83.74 today for crude oil. Bonds and rates, we're looking at a mixed bag here. Middle of the yield curve, the yields are falling. Long end, the yields are rising. The 10 years up 1.5 basis points at 4.86, and the U.S. 30 years at 5.02, and it's up 3.8 basis points. Taking a look at the U.S. dollar index, is at 106.38, and it's falling today. So we got a falling dollar today, but not much, just falling a little bit. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. And have a great afternoon. Bye-bye, guys.